is debate number one on what will be a long night here. Let's get back to the questions with Martha.
All right, Governor Huckabee, government grows and grows. In fact, neighborhoods in and around the Beltway get richer and richer all the time, while our manufacturing towns are disappearing. Still, Republicans from Reagan to Bush have vowed to shrink the size of government, but it never works. Is this presidency, any presidency, simply too small a David to slay the Goliath of government?
No, I don't think it's impossible, but we're not going to do it by doing the same things we've been doing for all these many years. And we've lost 5 million manufacturing jobs just since the year 2000. The other day I was in Newton, Iowa. Used to be a vibrant place where Maytag washers and dryers were built. Went out of business in 2007. All those jobs went to Mexico. All those people lost their jobs. There was a guy in my forum that day. He lost his job. He still has never found an employment that got anywhere near the job that he had. Let me ask you, how many people do you think living around the Beltway know a guy like that, care about a guy like that? Not many. And it's because there's 6 of the 10 richest counties in America that surround Washington, D.C. People who live in the bubbles of the high finance world of New York, the government world of Washington, the entertainment world of Hollywood don't have a clue about how hard people out here in Iowa are working every single day. And I believe one of the values of campaigning in Iowa, you can't win unless you go out and talk to farmers and housewives and welders and unemployed truck drivers. And I'd hate to think that a president could become president who never met people who have to struggle to make a living and put food on the table.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor. All right, Carly Fiorina, you've said that you can get the tax code down to 3 short, simple pages. But when lobbyists who have twisted the arms of members of Congress come sit with you in the Oval Office and say, Madam President, sorry, I cannot be with you on this one. You may understand what previous presidents have gone through, no?
You know, we have a professional political class of both parties. We have been talking about the same issues for election cycle after election cycle. Yeah, government is big and out of control, and the only way to get it under control is to control the money. And the only way to control the money is to ask the federal government to budget the way you do, to examine every dollar, to cut any dollar, to spend, to move any dollar. The fancy word for that is zero-based budgeting. I call it common sense. That 3-page tax code I talk about all the time here in Iowa, it's been around for 20 years. But politicians don't want to talk about it, and you bet the lobbyists don't want to talk about it. In fact, nobody wants to vote on a 3-page tax code or zero-based budgeting, although they've both been around for a long time. You know why? Because if you get those 2 things done, you are goring everybody's ox. You are taking the political establishment apart. You are actually challenging the status quo, which is what we need in the Oval Office. So you know who I'm going to count on? The citizens of this great nation, because you have extraordinary power. But when you do not use it, you are losing it. So take out your smartphones, folks. The people of Iowa know what I'm talking about. You take out your smartphones. If you agree with me that 3-page tax code needs to be passed, lobbyists aren't going to be in my office. If you agree we got to finally pass zero-based budgeting, take out your smartphones. Press 1 for yes, ladies and gentlemen. Press 2 for no. Citizens, we must take our country back.
Let me stay with you, Ms. Farina. You've said you will shrink the federal government by 30% over the next 2 years, and those jobs will not be filled, and you'll do it through retirement. Your critics would argue that's exactly what you did at Hewlett-Packard when 30,000 people lost their jobs. If it did not work at HP, why would it work at the federal government?
Well, first of all, I haven't said that. What I have said is that in the process of examining every dollar, cutting any dollar, and moving any dollar, we happen to know that in this vast federal bureaucracy, we have about 260,000 federal government employees who are going to retire, and we shouldn't replace them. Secondly, in Hewlett-Packard, as you know, the people of Iowa know this. We went through a tough time, the worst technology recession in 25 years. A great company called Gateway used to be right here in Iowa, but they didn't make the tough calls necessary to save all those jobs, and so they lost every one of those jobs. Yes, I've had to make some tough calls. We saved 80,000 jobs. We went on to grow to 160,000 jobs. And frankly, I think the American people know we need a president who's going to make some tough calls. So let me tell you where I'm going to start. The American people got a bill passed passed through Congress that said we could fire the top 400 senior executives at the VA for dereliction of duty, when we know that 307,000 veterans have died waiting for health care and the VA handed out $142 million worth of bonuses for superb performance, I'm going to start by firing 400 senior executives at the VA.
Thank you.
Senator Santorum, Bernie Sanders asked a woman in Iowa what it's like to live in poverty. She broke down in tears, saying that she lives on less than $10,000 a year and that she is ashamed every day. She leans on her parents for help. She said she can't buy presents for her children. We are all sympathetic to this woman's plight. On the other hand, the GOP is supposed to be the party of smaller government. So what would you look her in the eye and say?
What I would say is that we have to create jobs that give people wages and benefits that can help them provide for themselves and their families. And that's why I announced from a factory floor in western Pennsylvania, I pledge to make America the #1 manufacturing nation again in the world. And we can do it. China is starting to reorient itself away from a manufacturing economy that's dumping products on the overseas to providing more services to their people. This is an opportunity for America. It's an opportunity for us to get those jobs back. And by the way, do you want to solve global climate change? Take 2 million jobs from China in manufacturing and moving them back here to the United States, where we produce 1/5 the CO2 when we make things. We can help. We can do it all. We can take care of the environment. We can create more jobs here. 74% of Americans don't have a college degree, and unfortunately, most folks who are in the Republican Party don't talk about what we're going to do to create jobs for people who feel like neither political party cares about them. You elect me, we'll create opportunities for working men and women in this country, all over this country.
Thank you, Senator.
Governor Huckabee. Nikki Haley, Republican governor from South Carolina, recently said...
Did you miss me? Did you skip me?
I did not, but
I'm going to have something to say about this. You just keep going.
You bet, Governor. We have a couple more in the hopper for you in a moment here.
Yeah, I'll be there.
First, Governor Huckabee. Nikki Haley warned about listening to the siren call of the angriest voices, to which Donald Trump said he is very, very angry. Who's right, Governor?
A lot of Americans are angry, and I think it's important to understand why they're mad. They're mad because they see a government that continues to do fine. They see people at the top. They're doing fine. But that person you asked Rick about a moment ago, that lady that's making $10,000 a year, do you know what our poverty programs do to people? They keep them in poverty. They keep them in poverty because we have these arbitrary thresholds that mean that if you go to work, you lose all the benefits for your kids, Medicaid, WIC, Section 8 housing, food stamps, and then your kids go hungry. I know a little about poverty. My sister is here tonight, and both of us could tell you we did not grow up rich. My mother grew up in a house, oldest of 7 kids. She had lived in a house that didn't have floors, just dirt, no electricity, no running water. I resent it when people say, oh, people are poor because they want to be. No, they're not. Nobody wants to be poor, and that's a stupid, foolish thing, mean thing to say. People are poor because they don't know how to get out of the hole. And government shouldn't push them back in the hole, which is what our policies do when they punish people who want to go to work and don't let them out. We can fix that, but it takes some leadership to get it done.
Thank you, Governor.
So, Governor Gilmore, thanks to the Iranian nuclear deal, President Rouhani is currently on a tour of Europe, meeting with our closest allies in France and Italy. In fact, he's already landed some 50 to 85 billion are the estimates in deals with those countries, with our allies. More on the way. You and others say that you would rip up that deal. But really, by the time the next president is in office, won't that horse be well out of the barn?
You know, Martha, it may be out of the barn in that the Iranians may be moving towards a nuclear program, because this nuclear deal actually gives them a time frame up the road when they're going to be able to do that kind of program. And that's very dangerous because it means people in the Middle East have to begin to react to that right now. The United States, I think, has to continue to exercise its influence in the Middle East, stay active, and not do this pullback type of program that we're seeing all over the place with President Obama, which is creating this kind of danger. The world is a more dangerous place now than when I was an intelligence agent. We have not only this international guerrilla war, but also these challenges from these other countries as well. But Martha, I want to say one more thing to you and Bill. I disagree with Carly Fiorina when she says that it's just the political class in Washington. The truth is that the country has changed, and there are powerful forces at this point that are really controlling our lives, and that's why people are so angry. One of those is government, which is regulating everything through the Environmental Protection Agency, through other places. But the biggest one is the organized establishment media. And I just noticed just now you gave Carly Fiorina 2 one-minute answers in a row. This media across the country is manipulating and shaping and framing this campaign, and has been for at least a year now, in order to get the kind of choices that people are going to have an opportunity to see. This is wrong. It has to change. And when I'm president, it's going to change.
We have another question for you, Governor Gilmore. Back to back. Here we go. According to Google...
I'll take it.
You got it. According to Google, gun control is the most searched issue last month, making up nearly 80% of all the U.S. searches. People were looking for information on guns. When it comes to the tragic mass killings that we have seen in this country, Donald Trump says that what we need to do is build, quote, more institutions for people who are sickos. Charles Krauthammer also says that in some cases, involuntary commitment would help, and you have agreed with that. Given that institutions would be extraordinarily expensive to begin building, how much is too much to ask on this from the American taxpayer?
Martha, I just visited a community mental health clinic in Portsmouth, New Hampshire just 3 days ago, as a matter of fact. And when I was governor of Virginia, I tried to move more of those resources into the community, which will give us the facilities and the abilities to begin to identify people who actually might be dangerous and who abuse Second Amendment rights. But I do believe this is one of the really principal issues in this campaign. The president and Hillary Clinton are working very hard to change the culture of this country in order to put us in a position where we can't exercise our Second Amendment rights. That's wrong. I am a board member of the National Rifle Association. The reason I'm a board member is because I believe that individuals in this country can be trusted to exercise their rights under the Second Amendment and under the Bill of Rights. To take away people's Second Amendment rights is to redefine the individual in the society, and I'm not going to put up with it. As President of the United States, when Jim Gilmore is President of the United States, I can tell you this. Gun control is not going to be an issue. If gun control comes to the president's desk when I'm president, I'll veto it as fast as it takes Hillary Clinton to eliminate her emails.
Thank you, Governor Gilmore.
Governor Huckabee, you've mentioned the economy several times tonight. Let's go back to that for a moment, because in America today, 50% of the American workers are making less than $30,000 a year. Let's talk about what you could do for them. The Conservative Club for Growth has had an issue with your policy on taxes for years. In fact, it called you Tax Hike Mike. And the record shows state spending in Arkansas increased 54% when you were in charge. 94% if you include federal dollars during that same period. When it comes to helping people at the margins, $30,000, $32,000 a year, what's better? A tax and spend approach or shrinking government?
Well, I didn't have a tax and spend approach. You got to understand where the Club for Growth comes from. A bunch of rich guys sitting around writing checks to go after people they don't like. And they don't like me sometimes because I was fighting for the guys at the bottom, not just the guys at the top. I cut 94 taxes in a state that had never had a general major tax decrease in its history. I also was able to see per capita income growth in my state go up by 50%. I think it was a pretty darn good record. Look at the overall record and it was fine. But it's not about stats from when I was governor. Look, one of the reasons I support the fair tax is because it's the one thing, Bill, that would truly empower people at the bottom of the economy by no longer punishing them for their work. If a guy works an hourly job and he works 8 hours, gets paid for it, terrific. But if he works 16 hours, he doesn't get a double paycheck because he's going to be bumped up into a new tax bracket, and the government will get more of his second shift than he will. So we've actually punished him for being industrious, hardworking, and that is a foolish economic policy. That's hurting Americans about as much as anything.
Governor Huckabee, thank you. Same issue, Senator Santorum. The president says criticism of his economic policy is political hot air. You consistently talk about manufacturing jobs leaving America. You support a flat tax of 20%. How would a flat tax bring back 2 million jobs to America?
Well, in fact, the plan that I put forward is scored by the Tax Foundation as bringing 3.5 million jobs into this country. And we have provisions in the flat tax for the corporate side that actually has a phase-in in manufacturing. Manufacturers initially don't pay any income tax. 10% the next year and then 20%. We're going to also have a repatriation provision which says that if you have money overseas and you're Apple and you've got a couple $100 billion there, bring it back. The most you'll be taxed at 10%. Invest it here in America. Create jobs here in America with all that money that's sitting overseas. We also, it's not just taxes, it's regulation. I've pledged to cut every single Obama regulation, including Obamacare, and remove those regulations that cost more than $100 million in the economy. That will liberate, and that includes waters of the U.S. and the ozone regulations, the mercury regulations. All of these just crush our manufacturers and don't create an opportunity for us to survive. And remember, China produces 5 times as much CO2 and other pollutants per dollar of GDP as we do. You want to help the environment, bring jobs back to America.
Senator, thank you.
Still more to come from the Republican presidential debate tonight, and see how the campaigns are responding to the debate in real time. Go to Google.com and open your Google search app. Type in Fox News Debate. We'll see you in just a moment. Back.